right, Maddie, what are we talking about today?
Satan is back. We've got 3 Denvers, Mike Warnke, Michelle Remembers, or just make shit up, Geraldo, the McMartin Preschool trial, an occult crimes task force, and justice denied, and eventually justice prevailing.
Holy crap, let's ride this pitchfork.
Mighty, peculiar.
Matt, I have been so excited about this week. You know, after our first week, Satanic Panic Part 1, so excited about Satanic Panic Part 2. And, you know, this week, you know, a lot of times you do surprise me, but I wanted to make sure I was very surprisable this week. It's going to be tough, I know. We are also growing as a podcast. We're growing as a YouTube channel. Very excited about that. And I know that this show is going to be nuts. And I appreciate you being here for this.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited because actually last week was amazing. And it felt like we really captured something because there was a lot of momentum coming out of that particular episode too. So let's hope there's no sophomore slump this time as we do Satanic Panic Part 2. But first, let's do normal business and some new business. So like, subscribe, turn on notifications on YouTube, and then rate, review on your podcast forms. Otherwise, you know, I don't know, we're going to send you to a horrible preschool where you're going to get flushed down the toilet into secret tunnels and likely get your heart taken out in some kind of satanic ritual. Whew.
Like Congress.
Just like Congress. Yeah. Is that how you got to the floor? You flush yourself down a toilet? Yeah.
Congress is like, you know, you're
deposit it right in your desk.
You're an HET, you know, the human equivalent of a turd, you know, that gets flushed into, you know, Congress into the, well, as you know, and I know we're going to get in, you know, to this Satanic Panic Part 2 and some other weird anomalies and synchronicities to today. But, you know, part of the whole thing with the conspiracy theories is that the tunnels underneath the Capitol was where we held children, right, where they were harvested down there. So just to let people know.
You know, with the amount of tunnels that are underneath places, it's amazing that we don't have more like cave-ins. But so it's like a honeycomb under there. But so, okay, new business, though. We have merch. So the link will be in the show. You can get your T-shirts, water bottles. There was tote bags. So we're like NPR that way, except that you just buy it and we don't give it to you. But we might, because if you design something for our merch, so if you say submit a design for like a T-shirt or whatever, we'll get, you'll get that. So you can send your design ideas to our Gmail, which Doug will also put here in the show so I don't get it wrong. Or you can tweet it at us, you know, just alert us to it. But so merch design ideas would be great. We have merch. Let's see. Oh, and Denver, you wrote some books.
I have. I've wrote Bigfoot is Complicated and The Breach, as a lot of people know. Yeah.
And you also, from time to time, have been known to sign your name to those books.
Yes, and I know we had a listener win last week, but we also have another listener named Carrie who did get a signed book, 100%. Ooh. So people, I just want everybody to know, Carrie, who listens to our show weekly, can validate the fact that I will send you a signed book for no cost.
Yeah.
No cost. Just I'm sending you a signed book because you're such a kind person and a great listener.
So, yes, we will draw a name at random, and I hope Carrie's prom went well. Not at all like that one that, you know.
Oh, my gosh.
So well.
Bad Carrie. Not
But, yeah,
Carrie,
so if you'd like to win a signed book from Denver, also email us, and then producer Doug will choose a name at random. Excellent. I've always wanted to say that.
And that's Mighty. What is the email?
themightypeculiar@gmail.com. I was not going to say it because, but yes, themightypeculiar@gmail.com. And if it was wrong, Doug will correct me on the screen. Okay. So that's all the business. Now let's get to the Saint.
We're ready. Let's get to it.
Hey, do you remember 1972?
I do. I remember it so well. I was 2 years old, but I also remember our incredible show last week.
Yeah. So did you know we're not done with 1972?
God, I thought we had gotten through 76. Okay, so yeah, no, so but 72 is probably the jumping off point,
right?
Into number 2, yeah.
As a quick refresher, just for the sake of it, like 1972, we posited is a pivotal year in which the idea of Satanism, the occult, goes from like kind of innocent, harmless, like almost like chic to sinister, to dark. So the roots of the satanic panic that everyone thinks about of the 80s, which is what we're really talking about, begin in 1972. We talked about Time magazine did a cover that said like Satan is back, right? And that was in June of 1972. But 2 other things happened in 1972 that we did not discuss last week. One, a little song called Rocky Mountain High by John Denver was released as a single on October 30th, 1972.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And by the way, I know this is going to surprise you, Matt. I hope you're okay with this. A lot of people, when they hear my name, they're like, "Are you related to John Denver?"
Yeah, that's how relations work, right? First name to last name.
Oh, were you born in Colorado? The crazy thing that I get, and I know when I go to airports and things like that, or I meet people, do you know what they also say? Like, "Oh, your name is Denver. Denver like the state?" And I will say, "You mean Denver like the city?" Anyway, that happens a lot. Just want everybody to know Denver is a city.
So exactly when did Lauren Boebert realize that Denver wasn't the name of her state?
At the theater.
Okay. So remember that Rocky Mountain High comes out in 1972.
Right.
Now, it's obviously a very famous song. What you need to know right now about it is thanks to some kind of weird ruling through the FCC, there was a decision that like songs that were deemed to be like inappropriate because of drug references could be censored. Again, it was kind of it's a contested ruling. Like it never really seemed to do too much in the moment, but Rocky Mountain High, the song by John Denver, was deemed controversial and maybe even promoting drugs. So it got some backlash. Of course. We're going to come back to John Denver a little bit later, but just know that 1972 was the release of that song. Also in 1972, late 1972 into early 1973, a woman sought some therapy and met her doctor. Her name is Michelle Smith, and the doctor's name is Dr. Lawrence Pazder. They met in 1972. And over the next few years would end up, let's just say, concocting and straight making up stories. And eventually in 1980, they would publish a book called Michelle Remembers.
Oh, so it's a long process with Michelle Remembers.
Well, you know what had to happen? They had to like fall in love and leave their current spouses and marry each other, like any good therapist does with the patient.
Well, I heard, I saw The Sopranos, and I know that, with my vast knowledge of watching The Sopranos, that I know that you can have these inappropriate thoughts about your therapist. So, I mean, it's not that big of a surprise to me. And
yeah,
by the way,
I watched a lot of Bob Newhart, so I know that too.
Oh shit, yeah, that's right, Bob Newhart too. So we have a vast bedrock of knowledge based on The Sopranos and Bob Newhart. And when you talk about Rocky Mountain High really quick, what that reminded me of? It's sort of like the precursor to the warning labels from Tipper Gore, right? It looks like, it's just really interesting. But go ahead.
I think Doug's ears are tingling because there may be some talk about that in just a little bit.
Oh my goodness. So I try not to jump too far ahead.
No. Because
even though we're just shooting the breeze about Satanism.
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain High, I don't want to get too far ahead. So go ahead. I'm so sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
What you're going to realize, and what I actually struggled with, and Doug and I had to talk through this a lot, was I really wanted some of these events to happen at like more set times and then like be able to move from one to the other. But again, I mean, all of history, all of current events are like this, but like especially the Satanic Panic, so much runs concurrent that you don't get that clean, like, okay, this happens, stops, now this happens. So there's a little bit of that, like, why are we talking about Rocky Mountain High and Michelle Remembers? Like those two things don't actually cross paths, but they do.
Actually, I think it's almost like spaghetti memeing. It's so things happen in series, I think, until it almost reaches critical mass and everything starts happening in parallel. It's like you're throwing massive spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah.
And, it's just spreading everywhere so quickly and dripping down that it really doesn't happen in series, how the noodles fall off the wall. And I think, so I think like you can sort of do things in series up to a point. We've talked about so many of these. You talked about the Satanic Panic and how 1972. But you're really able to chart a pretty good course in series between 64 and 72, what we did last week. But then after 72, it's been memed. Right now, now everything is like the Matrix streams in parallel of weirdness.
Right. Well, because there was almost just like a pop culture and just general societal acceptance of things like Bewitched and even like Anton LaVey's antics and stuff. Once you turn it towards like, now this is all dark, nefarious, and antagonistic, that opens up the world for so many, grifters basically to come in and be like, I want a piece of this, and I want to, add my say, and and that's what we get.
Yeah. If I could put it on a billboard, Matt, this is what I would say. It's still about money, sex, and power. Even when we're talking about Satanism, when we're talking about all this, it's still money, it's still sex, it's still power. And a lot of it also is obviously narcissism and ego, but I think all of that is wrapped up in those same type of things. Like when you talked about Michelle and her therapist, it really comes down to what are the two things there? It's money and sex.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, you can always go back to those motives to find out what's going on. And not only the Satanic Panic world, but everywhere else. And like Anton LaVey, right? It was about the ladies.
It was. And for Pazder, it was about a lady. Not his wife, but the other lady.
God.
The Michelle. And you know what? I'm going to add that like for Michelle Remembers, money and sex, because obviously they made a ton of money off that book. And then obviously, their personal lives are their personal lives. But power comes huge for them too, because they are going to play a role beyond their own book into the McMartin Preschool trial.
Okay,
which is ridiculous. But so for anyone that doesn't know, Michelle Remembers is a book written by Lawrence Pazder, the therapist, and Michelle Smith, and in which it defines like the satanic ritual abuse, like what the bedrock of the Satanic Panic, the idea that, there are these satanic cults that will take children and do these horrible things, animal sacrifices, yada, yada, all of that stuff. Right. But the thing is, Michelle, when she sought therapy, it wasn't because she was traumatized by these memories. Really, she sought therapy for just generalized depression. She had actually had a miscarriage. I think her marriage probably was a little strained. That was her reason for seeking therapy. Dr. Lawrence Pazder decides that there's stuff that she's not saying. And then Michelle picks up on that and goes, there's stuff I'm not saying. And this just keeps happening. Because remember, this is an 8-year period of therapy before the book comes out. One particularly probably great therapy session was just Michelle screaming for 20 minutes nonstop. That's got to be great.
Was that their first time?
I'm wondering if that was a retelling. That was,
did you see how I did that? I mean, are people since they were having a relationship and she was screaming for 20
minutes. Basically, what ends up happening is he uses recovered memory therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Which becomes obviously huge in the 80s. Was never not controversial, right? Like while it seems like if you looked at like a lot of news reports at the time, it felt like this was a very accepted practice. No, even in the real time, people were like, this is weird. It's like hypnotism, maybe some like, what's the truth serum drug? The sodium pentothal or something?
Yeah, I used to take it all the time.
I mean, now you don't need it. You're just spouting truth like left and right. You are human truth serum drug.
I am. Oh,
just so you know, there's your tagline.
That's very sweet.
So what ends up coming out in these sessions is that in the 1950s, when Michelle was like 6 years old, she was the victim of a satanic cult in Canada, where she's from, which is, again, we talked about.
Can I tell you how weird this is right now?
Yeah.
Remember when my placard fell off yesterday?
Yeah.
My bear shirt.
Don't tell me it's fallen off.
Can you read it? Clova, Quebec.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just about to remember how that placard fell off when my shirt's about to fall off. I was like, this is not going well.
Well, I didn't want to come up too. I didn't want to come up too far because I thought it would show my nipples. And I know people. This is not that kind of show.
Yeah, but this is not.
I'm wearing a Canada shirt for the land of Canada. Yes. So just
where our Dark Lord Brian Adams is from.
The Dark Lord Brian. I just thought this was appropriate because Doug had forced a wardrobe change on me. To our loyal listeners on the podcast and also on YouTube, Doug was very disturbed by the first shirt that I had on, which was Homer Simpson carrying 2 donuts and saying "Sugar Daddy," and it really triggered him. And so he did force, as a producer, he has this that prerogative to force a wardrobe change. So I did see the Canada shirt, and honestly, Matt, you do know I did not know we were going back to Canada specifically.
No,
but of course, because Brian Adams is the Dark Lord, I figured that we should actually honor the Quebecois, right? The Quebecois. So anyway, there we go.
Well, you're welcome, Canada. We're here to talk about a crazy person that you allowed to write a book and really do some horrible cultural damage to America. So
I tell you, I didn't know Canada was actually the Satan of all countries.
Exactly. So now her story is nuts, and it's on face value, it's ridiculous. I mean, it is the foundation of everything about the Satanic Panic. It's all of the robes, the altars, it's her family members. Now this is all taken with on face value, and there's the kind of culmination of her memories of in the book is an 81-day ritual that happens when she's 6 years old that involves hundreds of people in this big room, and it goes for 81 days. It's only stopped because the Archangel Michelangelo, one of them, intervenes personally to save her. Yeah, it's been great.
Yes, you're talking about the Archangel Michael?
Michael. Yeah, not Michelangelo.
No, that is also another archangel that liked to do art. But no, I think it's an art angel.
An art angel and an archangel. All right. Hey, we're going to learn more about art by Satan soon, too.
God dang. Are my dad jokes getting worse, Matt? I mean,
no, better.
Okay. Because
my taste is getting worse.
No, I feel bad about Archangel and Archangel. I honestly want to apologize again to the audience. It's just so brutally bad, and I love it. It's like the joke that I tell. So my daughters, are 31, 30, and 26. So when I go to parties with them, not weird, just get-togethers. I don't go party with youngsters.
You're not wearing robes. It's not in a cut. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm not. Goodness Lord, I'm not Rudy Giuliani. but but I'd like to tell a joke that goes something like this, and I think that you guys will appreciate the brilliance of this joke and why my kids hate me. So I say, it's what's green and healthy and sings nothing but a hound dog?
I sadly, I think I know what this is, but what is green and healthy and sings nothing but a hound dog?
Elvis Parsley.
I knew it.
And my kids hate me for this because I tell that joke even at their graduations. I'm like, hey, I got a joke. And my kids actually are like, we really hate you, Dad.
So anyway. Do you know what I would do if I was one of your kids? And you told that joke?
What would you do?
I'd be like, we don't have time for this. THYME.
That's
Dad
great.
joke powers combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let us never get together then.
You beat me to it. No. Okay. All right. I'm done. I'm really done. Okay.
Okay. My grandmother had a joke.
Oh boy.
She knows. You know what you don't never want to go into a garden and do? Let us turn up and pee.
Miss H6, you sank my battleship.
From vegetables to Satan, only her the mighty peculiar.
So, crazy thing about that 81-day nonstop ritual thing. See, Michelle was in school at the time because she was a child. Yes. And there was no reported absences. So unless it was all from the hours of like 3 p.m. to school drop off, shit didn't happen. Just didn't happen.
Well, never let facts get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. So this book comes out in 1980 and it's a hit. It's a sensation. Suddenly the idea of like repressed memories due to trauma, which again, now there is some merit to the idea that like people can repress traumatic memories, but this is taking like that to like a level that just is impossible. One, again, lack of any physical evidence that this happened, any concurrent documentation. Oh, there's another little interesting thing. In the book, they never mention that Michelle has 2 sisters.
Of course they don't.
That's just, little detail left out. Like,
Yeah, that's because you need corroborating evidence for something that's insane. And you have 2 sexual partners writing a book for the grift. Yeah, my guess is the doctor knew it was bullshit, but I don't know how susceptible Michelle was. I don't.
Well, remember how it was October 30th, 1972 that Rocky Mountain High was released? Well, October 30th, 1980, 2 days before Michelle Remembers is released, Michelle's father goes, what's this book? What did I do? What are you saying I did? No.
Oh, of course. Dad's probably like, what are you talking about?
He was named as the leader.
I only went to one Anton LaVey party.
It was in the 50s.
And it was all about the ladies. Right? There was...
Yeah.
The dad's like, what the hell, man? I was a swinger for a week. A week.
Again, this is taken at face value. This crazy story. There's no reason people should believe this. No. The fact that like there is like purported crimes like in this, and like Lawrence Pazder never seems to like consult with authorities or never says like you can't. She's telling me about murders. Like they should be investigated, right? There's got to be cold. No, none of it. It all goes straight to the book.
Of course. I mean, and there's no. Again, here's another theme. It's interesting. I wonder who the publisher was. I wonder if this was a large publisher for that book, because you're looking at media again, pushing things into the, a non-substantiated, ridiculous, repressed memory Satanism story. Right. And if anybody looked at even one layer, it's not 2 layers down, Matt. When you talk about having sisters or dad going, hey, I don't remember the 81 days until the Archangel Michael. It's just insane that an archangel. Listen, anybody who would read the book, as soon as you got an angel coming down after 81 days, you're like, yeah, this is fiction. Yeah. Not just fiction. It's sort of feverish, crazy fiction based on a really diluted sense of morality and intellectualism. Right. And again, but I mean, are you, Matt, and really, are you surprised? I don't want to get serious here, but when you're looking at what's happening today, when you're looking at, I mean, let's be topical. When you think that 7 of the 9 people running for the Republican House Speaker right now believe the election was stolen, which is all QAnon adjacent stuff. Right. And all those 7 might have a different idea of why it was stolen. It could be broken algorithms. It could be hammer and scorecard. It could be the Italian satellites. It could be the rerouting to Chinese servers. It could be the burnt ballots. It could be actually the QFS blockchain watermark ballots. It could be all that. You have 7 of 9 people running right now. Yeah. If we're talking about credulity, if you're talking about susceptibility to crazy, are we really that surprised that in 1980, the people were just taken by this repressed memory story about her being just horribly assaulted? Yeah. As from her dad, which I can't even. Can you imagine now, Matt? You have kids. I have kids. Doug has kids. Can you imagine being? Dear Lord. This is a horrific story. I mean, we're funny as hell on this show, and I love that, but this is horrific.
In the narrative, she is subjected to so much physical and sexual abuse that in the actual narrative, it's talking about like scars and all this damage to her body. Well, the thing is, they knew, or at least had to anticipate, that like none of that was verifiable, right? Because you'd look at her now and you wouldn't see any of it. Well, that's where the Archangel really comes in, because not only does he save her, he heals her. It takes all of the stuff and then represses her memories. So really, it wasn't trauma that repressed her memories. It was divine intervention.
So this psychologist was good enough to pierce the veil of God's memory wipe?
Yep, 100%.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Divine undoing of all physical evidence that she'd been subjected to any of this.
Well, then we got our show, Sex Pierces the Veil. But I mean, there's a lot layers. Yes. Layers, Matt. Layers. Yeah. I'm sorry. My brain is now going. I mean, I got 57 jokes in my head right now, stacked like layers, like cordwood. After that, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing it. It's just like boom, 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 boom. Like I'm seeing all these like psychiatric. It's insane. Go ahead, please, Matt. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I said a lot runs concurrent, and last week we teased a guy named Mike Warnke, right? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this guy because, one, he's one of the most famous of the Satanic Panic. What would you call it? Like promoters, grifters, fabulous, all that. So, but note, remember last week, he makes his debut in what year?
1972 or 76?
No, it was 72.
I was right? 72. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
He shows up with the Witchmobile.
Yes, the Witchmobile, which I love.
Now he's making.
Matt, I hate to interrupt.
No,
I did forget to make I think you and Doug will appreciate this. When you're talking about things that are totally made up and are provably wrong.
Yeah. And
the connection to today, it's provably wrong. And I can give you an example is Hillary Clinton in the basement of Comet Ping Pong, a pizza place, harvesting children. Mm-hmm. It's that same kind of role where the facts never actually support what the fabulists are saying. So everything you're talking about, Matt, I love making those connections because you're doing it for everyone. And that's why you're so good at this, is that when you're doing the research, is that what happened in the 70s and 80s when you're talking about Satanic Panic does seem oddly QAnon adjacent. But go ahead. Yes.
It's shockingly applicable to today, and depressingly so, because, again, one of my other things through this process has been looking for like some satisfactory resolution to some of this, right? To find evidence that we have moved past this. And, you know, while I do find a little bit here and there, it's like it always ends up falling way to like, oh, but here was a whole other thing I didn't know about that it continued. So with Mike Warnke, he publishes a book in 1973 called The Satan Seller. And this is his version of Michelle Remembers. But it doesn't catch on until 1980. Weird. Maybe because something like Michelle Remembers comes out and suddenly people are looking for this thing. So he spent 7 years like kind of just doing the normal, like he's a stand-up comedian. And I use that term so loosely that like, you know, it's, oh God, he's not funny.
I bet he actually made some money though.
He made a ton of money. He also made a lot of wives, like serially, like he just kept, like everywhere he went, it was like he moved to California, get a new wife, moved to Denver, where he became the most successful, Denver, Colorado, got a new wife. Oh, yeah. You know,
it's about the ladies.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And Doug will definitely be dropping a picture of Mike Warnke in his prime in this episode. But anyways, this guy again, same thing. Like he just makes up like that he was the high priest of a Luciferian cult that spanned 3 cities, 1,500 coven members, that he participated in human sacrifice, which means he's admitting to murder. Again, no serious person seems to like go, maybe we need to investigate that. Should be a tell. Right. You know, again, it's all nonsense. But what he does is, because he's got this stand-up comedy thing and he's very successful at it, because He basically, you watch one of his like hour-long specials, right? You get 30 minutes of the worst hacky jokes. How do you know when yogurt goes bad? Why do you park in the driveway, drive on the parkway? That nonsense.
What's
right?
green and healthy and sings nothing but a hound
Look,
dog?
I wasn't going to say it, but yeah. Then his set takes a real hard turn into graphic depictions of babies being sacrificed to Satan. And that's how he leaves people for the last 30 minutes. He goes full, dark, gritty, satanic panic. And this is just like, and he's huge. His video like tapes are sold through churches. Like everyone, like if you had like, if you weren't like the religious household in the neighborhood, but like your friend had like the really religious parents, that friend had all of the Mike Warnke tapes.
So he was sort of like Greg Locke before Greg Locke. I mean,
oh my gosh, yes.
And so really just a magnificent grifter of fantasy and the stupid that appealed to the most ignorant. But,
yes.
you know, it was, who was it? No, I mean, stupid dollars, listen, they spend the same as smart dollars. There's no difference in that dollar bill. And it's the same as voting. And
they're made easier.
They so much easier. I just think the ROI, the return on investment on fantasy is so spectacular. It's surprising. So many people involved with it. It's surprising that more people are involved with it. If you think about us right now, me, you, and Doug, if we were going into actually a story about real Satanists, or we were actually pushing this into the sphere now, that we went and met with Satanists and they actually did the things we talked about, I promise you we'd have 1.9 million views. Oh,
100%.
I was watching something on YouTube. There's this guy who was looking for the feral people of Tennessee. And he said that the only way they talked was through clicks. Sort of like where probably M. Night Shyamalan got his idea for Signs. So anyway, so you have the feral people of Tennessee, and this guy out there during his 30-minute video, I think he was former military, but he was also actually said something was chasing him and started running because he could hear clicks in the trees. Either he was completely grifting and making it up, or he actually was mentally unwell. He had put himself into a space where something was following him. He even would look down. There was a pile of bones that looked like maybe a year old. I've seen a lot of, I mean, honestly, I've been in the woods my whole life hunting, but there's no way there would be, he goes, oh, look at all this blood. You know what it was? It was the leaves when they start to rot after autumn, or you understand? It's not blood.
Yeah. They're composting.
And can I tell you guys how many views he had? 1.8 million.
Look,
1.8 million about the feral people of Tennessee that have sunken in eyes and they swing in the trees. But anyway, go ahead, Matt. I'm going to
announce right here now, this is the last episode of this format of The Mighty Peculiar. Next week, we're going to be back with a whole different setup. And let's just say, hey, we found Bigfoot. Tune in next week.
Next week. So now, what you have, and I want to sum up because I want to hear some more here. So we have Warnke really rocking and rolling 72, what you're talking about with Michelle Remembers. You're talking about the sexual peccadillos that led to this ridiculous book on repressed memories about satanic
ritual abuse.
Yes. Thank you. And we're also starting to see that, again, it's about sex, money, and power. And that stupid money sort of spends like smart money. And there's an incredible return on investment. But it's really the amazing parallels of how now Satanism has been memed throughout society.
Yes. Yeah. So think about this. So Mike Warnke is probably like, if Michelle Remembers, if Lawrence Pazder in that book, like really set the template for moving forward for all of the claims that are going to happen about like people that feel they've been victims of like satanic cults. So Mike Warnke is the memer. He's the one that is now, because he's taking it into the comedy realm, right? It's funny. He makes it very approachable, and then he hits you with the dark stuff. So that's kind of how it gets into kind of mainstream culture. Because like I said, at his height, like he's rivaling like Seinfeld at his heights of stand-up comedy, like in terms of venue and stuff. Like, so that's a lot of people. In 1983 will be the start of the biggest, like, well, up until, I don't know, it might still hold this record. it was the most expensive legal procedure in American history. Like, it was the McMartin Preschool trials, like, will go from 83 first accusation and won't resolve until mid 1990, 7 years. Now, I'm going to say this. One guy spent 5 years in jail, was never actually convicted or even really accused. He just was denied bail, like pretrial bail, spent 5 years in prison, nothing else. Most expensive trial in U.S. history, lasting roughly 7 years, resulted in nothing. But do you know who got to play a big role once the accusations started coming out as an expert, a consulting expert?
Is it Warnke?
He did on TV on 2020, and in an official capacity, someone named Dr. Lawrence Pazder showed up in California to work with the children.
So you have Pazder and Warnke pushing
McMartin
Preschool. It's almost like it's reached its fever pitch now. When you talked about the gestation period of this, now it's born. It is the Rosemary's Baby of hysteria happening during the school trial. Yeah.
And so this is why when you said like money, sex, power, and how like Michelle Remembers definitely showed money and sex. Well, this is where I now submit to you that it also shows power, because this guy is now being this expert on Satanism and the activities of Satanists is now being called in to consult. That's power.
It's the expert on made up shit hypothesis I put on here. That's so good. I mean, from Bigfoot to aliens to the crap we talked about last week, he's an expert on something made up that's being used to vilify other people and destroy their lives.
Yes.
It is the most egregious bullshit. It absolutely infuriates me.
And it's nefarious. Let's say this. Like, nefarious. This is not a guy that was misguided, like, and thought he was really helping people. Like, there's no reading of Lawrence Pazder's actions that you could come away with that like he legit thought he was helping. He had to know that he was, one, making it all up, and two, feeding a very, very dangerous fire. Because so how McMartin Preschool even happens is, and we're not going to go into super depth about this, because again, this is kind of the, this is the summer blockbuster marquee, thing of the Satanic Panic. So information is very readily available. But I want to set the stage here, because it's going to be, well, I'm going to set the stage to be more infuriating later. Basically.
No, I got you.
But so in 1983, there's a woman named Judy Johnson. She is a single mom. She picks her son up from preschool, and she notices like some redness, like near his anus, right? And what should just be like kind of normal, like, maybe you go to the doctor to see if like.
Can I talk about redness around the anus?
Yes.
In a very specific way. I wiped with poison ivy when I was 12 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
And I started to get like this awful itch when I was at a restaurant called El Taco. And I actually had to go in the bathroom. I'm 12 years old. And I'm like, I think I have worms. I think I have worms from this El Taco food. And it itched so bad.
Because you hadn't put two and two together yet?
I was 12 years old. I was fishing and I had wiped with some vines. And if you want to talk about redness around the anus,
I mean,
this was redness anus explosion. Like 6 weeks I had poison ivy. So I just want to let you know there's other factors that could cause redness around the anus.
As a parent, when you have young kids and they're like preschool age, how's their hygiene? How's their self-hygiene?
Hold on a second. Why would I tell that story, Matt?
It's an amazing story, because what I want to know, are you sure this was not an RMT? Like, are you sure this is not RMT, repressed memory therapy, that were happening? Are you sure that was poison ivy and not Satan?
It could have been. It could have been Satan anus, but I'm pretty sure it was poison ivy anus. I mean, there's a direct facts-based line to wiping with a silvery leaf or a shiny leaf off of a tree, and the doctor telling you, son, You done wiped with some poison ivy and it's in your anus.
He's no big city doctor, but he can tell you.
An old country doctor could see that there was some poison ivy around the red spot right there.
Look, what we're trying to say here, dear audience, is the truth isn't always pretty, but it's the truth.
But it's the truth.
No,
it's true. That's a factual statement.
What this ends up being, though, there's some key elements that are going to be left out for a little while, but this is what starts all of the McMartin preschool. Because what this quickly turns in, first she kind of blames her ex-husband for maybe like molesting their child, but quickly changes to a guy named Ray Bucky, who is an employee at the McMartin preschool, right? And now Ray Bucky will become the target of most of the claims, like that he he molested this child, right? Now, I have to read something verbatim because it's just you can't believe this. But so I said that was in 1983, right? So she makes this claim. She goes to the she goes to the police. The claim alone is enough to get Ray Bucky taken into custody, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, normally, let me ask you this: like, if you put yourself in the position of like an investigator, like a detective or an investigator, right? And you got this claim, you've got this suspect. How are you going to proceed? Like, and I'm going to give you two options. Are you going to proceed with discretion and like seriousness, or like in the most public way possible?
You have to go serious. You have to go very sober-minded on these type of activities because you don't want to make it too public because you're going to sensationalize the case and evidence could be tainted. No pun intended. But yeah, so I mean, you don't want any of that to happen.
Do you know what they did?
Please don't tell me they put in a newspaper the first day.
No, actually, they sent a letter to 200 parents. And this is the letter. I'm just going to read this verbatim, okay? Dear parent, this department is conducting a criminal investigation involving child molestation, 288 PC. Ray Bucky, an employee of Virginia McMartin's preschool, was arrested September 7th, 1987 by this department. The following procedure is obviously an unpleasant one, but to protect the rights of your children, as well as the rights of the accused, this inquiry is necessary for complete investigation. Records indicate that your child has been or is currently a student at the preschool. So not all just current students. We are asking your assistance in this continuing investigation. Please question your child to see if he or she has been a witness to any crime or if he or she has been a victim. Our investigation indicates that the possible criminal acts include oral sex, fondling of genitals, buttock or chest area, and they just list crimes. Please complete the enclosed information form and return to this department in the enclosed stamped return envelope as soon as possible. We will contact you if circumstances dictate. My favorite part of this letter, remember, 200 parents, not even necessarily of current students. We ask you, please keep this investigation strictly confidential because of the nature of the charges and the highly emotional effect it could have on our community. Please do not discuss this investigation with anyone outside your immediate family. Do not contact or discuss this investigation with Raymond Bucky, any member of the accused defendant's family, or employees connected with the McMartin Preschool. So send it out to 200 people, but hey, let's just keep it between us.
There's layers to this. Number one, if that were to happen to children, it's so brutally awful. I don't have the words because all of us here have children, and I can't imagine getting a letter like that. Number one, especially if my child, you got to remember I was military intelligence. Yeah. But if I suspect that there's some individual hurting my child in that way, first of all, it's going to create hysteria with 200 parents. But the flip to this is when the prosecutor or the investigator send that out, is it in good faith? Which I would say it's not. I think they were expecting, saying it's confidential and putting that out there, they're going to get a lot more stories of Ray Bucky's shenanigans. The issue that if you put everything that they're thinking happened, you're actually implanting what those stories will be from the parents when they ask their kids about what happened.
Exactly.
Hey, honey, did you get inappropriately touched by Mr. Bucky? Well, one time he touched me on the shoulder and it was, and then, it can go down that line. And so I'm really sort of torn by this. If you had evidence, the parents are going to know pretty quickly based on the fact that they're convicted. They see it in the newspaper, and then there's going to be a cascading effect of that. But if you don't have the evidence, or it's based on something fabricated, or you have two people like Satanists, repressed memory individuals coming as experts, I think you have a complete loss of perspective on how to actually pursue the case.
Yes.
So, for me, it seems so reminiscent of QAnon, where you're talking about save our children and you're talking about stopping molestation when it's fantastical, when real things are actually happening, and it's taking away resources from the actual real crimes that are happening.
Yeah.
Stupid allows real criminals to get away with things. And if and that's really what happens, is that if you have hysteria and conspiracy theories, it allows the real evil to happen in a way that we can't identify because we're not facts-based.
Now, as the children start getting involved in testimony and like interviews, these are taped interviews. This is where pastors definitely involved. A lot of not great prosecutors are, whether they're just inept, whether they are just super ambitious, like who knows? Right. So the claims that are being made, and I've talked about this before, I kind of categorize them differently. There's the stuff that clearly adults have led the kids to say, because they're very graphic depictions of things that the kids this age just don't know, and let alone are not using these words, like the words to describe. Then there's the stuff that I feel like the kids are just trying to predict what the adults want. That's because there's stuff that says, like, some of the kids were saying that Ray Bucky and Virginia McMartin got on brooms and flew around the classroom like cartoon witches, because that's what children think of. This is a little aside, but I think this is wonderful. So remember I talked about how kids getting flushed down toilets into like secret. That's where this comes from. Kids were interviewed saying they saw children flush down toilets to a secret basement under the preschool. California doesn't have basements.
No,
but there's a secret Satan basement. And guess what? Even after all this is over, once everyone's like, the trial's done, everything, there are still people out there that are using technology to find the secret basements that don't exist under a preschool that has been demolished. There's people that still use it. They're still like scanning the ground.
It's like Comic Ping Pong did not have a basement either, Matt.
No,
so you're telling me
that's what I was thinking of when you mentioned Hillary earlier. I was like,
no basements. There's no weird tunnels underneath the Capitol that holds kids either. This is sort of, it's like the false flag theories, or the providence of the most stupid.
Yeah.
The providence of the most stupid is that when you're talking about the basement theories of child abduction are so bizarrely ridiculous. And that to me means that the QAnon conspiracy theory is no smarter than what a 6-year-old made up or an 8-year-old made up about, kids being flushed like turds and their teachers flying around on brooms. That is QAnon.
Do you know
that is QAnon?
That's
stupid. If you have a Q sticker on your car, you're an idiot. If you believe that the election was actually managed or stolen by broken algorithms or Italian satellites, you are an idiot. And I think that's what scares the hell out of me, is the tens of millions of people believe kids are flushed down toilets. There's broom riding Satanists, and also that there was a Comet Ping Pong QAnon-based conspiracy theory where Hillary was harvesting kids in the basement. All that stuff's the same. It's the same shite. It can just be metastasized better today. And it's what a fantastic story about the turds in the basement. I mean, that's just, and I'm not even saying that in a funny way. But,
no, it's true. Well, and let's
children as turds in the basement. Yeah.
Let's draw these parallels even tighter, right? So, because as I said, the pre-trial for the McMartin, the accusations are in 1983. There's no trial. The trials don't even start until 1987. There's 4 years of this simmering and investigations and where on the doll were you taught, like that kind of stuff. Well, guess what also comes out of this time? A slogan to rally the troops called "Believe the Children." What does QAnon say?
Save our children. # save our children. # believe the children.
They literally changed a word.
One word. I'm telling. No. It's the same
basements that aren't there, and believe the children, save the children. It's
the same thing.
So, you said also that like QAnon is the product of basically it was created by people no smarter than 6-year-olds and stuff. Do you know what I'll submit to you that it was also maybe helped by like a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, because that's what Judy Johnson, the mom that first alleged all this stuff, this was withheld from the defense. But the prosecutors knew that she was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, a chronic alcoholic who died due to her alcoholism in her home in 1986 before the trials even started.
That you would think that would be an important piece of the puzzle for investigators. Number one. Number two, can I sort of amend my statement about QAnon believers being no smarter than 6-year-olds?
Yeah, no, I know. That's a slam to 6-year-olds.
It is a slam to 6-year-olds. Even more so, I do believe there's a brilliance to the grifters who can mine that type of ignorance at every single level, whether you're online prophets, whether you're Mike Flynn, whether you're Rudy Giuliani, whether you're Sidney Powell, whether you're Lynn Wood, whether you're, what was the movie that came out with Jim Caviezel?
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
Tim with the Sheridan.
Yeah, when you're talking about him now being accused of sexual harassment and things like that, there's a baseline. And by the way, and I know this goes to Donald Trump. He is one of these. This is what he is. And if people are like, "Oh, Dan, you must be a secret Democrat to not like Donald Trump. You're not a real Republican. You've left the GOP because you've been overtaken by the Soros deep state and the globalists, and you must really be a secret Democrat." And in the pejorative, a secret Jew, which I've been called also, as you see what's happening in Israel. Yeah. I think there is, again, we go back to the ROI on weaponizing fantasy and monetizing fantasy is fantastic. I'm a little angry. I'm not going to lie. Listen, I'm infuriated. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of the facts-based or people who try to live in some kind of, a foundation of truth, where truth is something that you value. That you have not only those grifters taking advantage of people, but those very people taken advantage of. I start to get angry at their ignorance, and I'm thinking, man, I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised in this spiritual that God trumps all facts. Your faith, it's faith. And so I told you guys, I was told if you read books that are anti-Mormon, you're pretty much an apostate. Yeah. So, it's those kind of things that it just infuriates me. And then the real people get away with it. The real bad actors, those pedophiles and those that are running Boy Scout troops or in churches, or, the people that are actually molesting children, the Catholic Church, the LDS Church, all the things that you find out about, that stuff is being hidden up while you have a paranoid schizophrenic accusing a teacher of something that's really hard to prove. And then you have a prosecuting class that wants to take advantage of the situation based on money, power, re-election, things like that.
I think it's all the attention. It becomes a media storm, right? So I'm sure they get caught up in it too. And to pick up on something, I was going to say what, you said, like, while basically this becomes a giant distraction, think of all the stuff that is not being investigated or whatever. Well, let's even go simpler than that. This mom was a paranoid schizophrenic chronic alcoholic who was put up on a pedestal and given so much sway. How well do you think that kid was being taken care of? Think about this. She first initially tried to accuse her ex-husband of doing horrible things to the child. Then that didn't catch. So do you think that kid is being well cared for in this time when they're constantly being prodded for to tell more and more fantastic stories? So what should have been like a case of, either child endangerment or just some kind of welfare check on that. Instead, they glamorize her and take everything. And again, it outlives her. She dies before the trial even starts.
So a wet brain paranoid schizophrenic is the creator of this hysteria.
Yes. This is the point where I'm like, the fever has to break, right? We need a victory. We need something to some sanity to push back. on the crazy. And we do get some. We get a man named John Denver who comes in. Again, this is running concurrently. There's a lot of trouble in the music industry, or I should say trouble directed at the music industry with what's PMRC and led by Tipper Gore.
Oh, my God.
Now, to be fair, what we're going to say is, so Doug and I had some fun here. And actually,
remember, I didn't read any, I hope people understand. I am just going with the flow. When I talked about Tipper Gore at the beginning, that was me making that connection at the beginning. You guys didn't even give it away. And I got to tell you right now, you two are brilliant. What a freaking circular love fest of insanity you guys are prepared today.
Well, and at this point, let's just call Doug in because he's going to help out here.
I would love to. Wow.
So, hey, Doug.
Hey.
So I want to set this up by saying, first and foremost, the PMRC was not strictly about the Satanic Panic, although even in Tipper Gore's book that she wrote about this whole thing, she devoted a whole chapter to the occult. And you and I, when we were meeting in preparation for this episode, rediscovered the Filthy 15 list. The songs that were like deemed the most
was Duty Brown
objectionable. What's that?
No, never mind.
But Mary Elizabeth Gore starts this business after her daughter. I was there for this whole thing. It was actually the first thing that made me interested in politics, period.
Oh, yeah.
As a young man, and watched the trial on TV, right? And her daughter, I guess it started, her daughter brings home the soundtrack to Purple Rain. And she hears a song called Darling Nikki. Where the first line has a reference to masturbating with a magazine. And Tipper loses her mind. And it starts this train of thought where she says to like investigate art as a whole, right? Like all the records. And this is what leads to these trials. I know that the PMRC trials are like now seen as sort of a punchline, right? Like, look at these hysterical people and what they did in Congress. They weren't victimless, right? So we had to be brief because we're running long. The only people that defended this as artists, right, were John Denver, Dee Snider, and Frank Zappa, right? You'll remember the zingers. Zappa's famously Mr. Gore. What you're suggesting is curing dandruff with decapitation, right? Dee Snider snaps at Tipper. She had some opposition to his song Under the Blade, which was about a surgical procedure.
Yes.
And he said, you're the one with the filthy mind, because it wasn't about sadomasochism, as you have just accused me in front of Congress and subsequently the media. It was about a throat surgery.
Yeah.
Or, so
I underline that point, Doug. Like, that is one of the, I think, most precise, spot on observations being made is the people that are coming up with this stuff really are the ones that are supposedly the most against it. The ones that are coming up with all of the like horrors that like are supposedly being, put upon people and like the atrocities are the ones that are like, the ones trying to go like, oh, but isn't it awful that our kids are exposed to this? It's like, you're coming up with it. No one else is. So
right. And in fairness, like there were some, things that might alarm a parent, like the cover of the Wasp record, like a beast, right? With the saw blade and the cry. There's some things if you see, you're kind of like, oh, well, why'd you buy that? You're 12, right? Like,
right. Yeah, exactly.
But this was to set it up a little bit better. This was a congressional hearing.
And it was deadly serious, by the way. Deadly serious.
Yeah. And the people that didn't show up were, to defend art in this specific instance, Madonna, Prince, Springsteen, the biggest stars of the time did not show up for this. Yeah. And what the senators' wives were trying to accomplish was a rating system on records that would hurt artists really bad. Like, I know one rapper had said something really naive, like, well, now my records will sell more, right? Walmart was the most powerful your record sales really depended on stores and Walmart. Yeah, places where Walmart's the only store in the town, right?
Yeah.
and this would affect
it's
Walmart.
millions and millions and
yeah,
millions.
like my nephew couldn't. I mean, this is how much power Walmart had. My nephew couldn't find an authentic copy of Nirvana's In Utero. This is a decade later.
Yeah,
because there are songs missing from it because they opposed the titles. While PMRC is happening, the media, you're like hacky, sort of. We discussed this in the meeting. Like the people who are trying to figure out how Oprah is becoming successful. Geraldo is a big one, right?
Yep.
Are now turning this into really successful content on daytime television, right?
Yeah.
So while the trial is happening, they're creating a whole ghost story for, America. Mm-hmm. And it's not until John Denver, who is the one person with credibility with adults at the time and a prolific Christian in the truest sense of the word. I mentioned this to Matt. When I know that the Superman was just recast, when I hear Superman or what he's supposed to sound like in the comics, it's John Denver's voice. I'm not going to try to quote his speech because I would just slaughter it, right?
Yeah.
What I will say is that I liken it to especially now in the context that the two of you have put this specific topic in. It is just as profound, if not more powerful than it was at the time. And I liken it to Charlie Chaplin's Great Dictator speech.
Honorable Chairman, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and a privilege to appear before you this morning and to take advantage of the opportunity given me in our free society to speak my mind, to give voice to my opinions in a public forum in front of not only the leadership of our great country, but the press and the media, and through them all who might be listening around our country and around the world. I'm here to address the issue of a possible rating system in the recording industry, labeling records where excesses of explicit sex or graphic violence have occurred, and furthermore references to drugs and alcohol or the occult are included in the lyrics. These hearings have been called to determine whether or not the government should intervene to enforce this practice. Mr. Chairman, this would approach censorship. May I be very clear that I'm strongly opposed to censorship of any kind in our society or anywhere else in the world. I've had in my experience 2 encounters with a sort of censorship. My song Rocky Mountain High was banned from many radio stations as a drug-related song. This was obviously done by people who'd never seen or been to the Rocky Mountains and also had never experienced the elation, the celebration of life, or the joy in living that one feels when he observes something as wondrous as the Perseid meteor shower. On a moonless and cloudless night, when there are so many stars that you have a shadow from the starlight. And you're out camping with your friends, your best friends, and introducing them to one of nature's most spectacular light shows for the very first time. Obviously a clear case of misinterpretation. And Mr. Chairman, what assurance have I that any national panel to review my music would make any better judgment? To my knowledge, my movie, Oh God, was not banned in any theaters. However, some newspapers refused to print our advertisements, and some theaters refused to put the name of the film in the marquee. I don't believe that we were using the name of our Lord in vain. Quite the opposite, we were making a small effort to spread his message that we are here for each other and not against each other. Discipline and self-restraint, when practiced by an individual, a family, or a company, is an effective way to deal with this issue. The same thing when forced on a people by their government, or worse, by a self-appointed watchdog of public morals, is suppression and will not be tolerated in a democratic society.
After the meeting, I spent some time color correcting the speech and mixing the sound so it could be as perfect as possible. And we're going to put it out on the Mighty Peculiar channel later in the week.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, so that's all the color I have. That's all the color I have to give this.
So, and see, that's the thing. Like, and to say that, like, John Denver became the perfect messenger, this goes back to what we said in 1972. Rocky Mountain High gets some pushback for being maybe drug related.
Right.
So while we're in the height of a satanic panic, and not all of the PMRC was about the Satan stuff, but like that's what made this storm possible, right? Like, I don't know that you get the media circus in the congressional hearings without the Satanic Panic stuff also happening. That seems to be, so it's like the kids are under siege. And when Denver shows up, John Denver, that is, shows up and basically says, like, you guys did this to me. Yeah. Right. Like unrelated to what's going on right now. But if it can be done to me, look who it can be done to. And that was that moral clarity that if I had Satan's powers, I would be like, that's where the story ends. Boom, we go out on a high note, right? Like that's 1985, but no. And we'll do a little rapid fire here because, as Doug said, kind of running long. And
by the way, when you're talking about censorship like this, and I know there's not a happy ending because we're seeing a resurgence in book burning, and we're seeing a resurgence in the very things we're discussing right now.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to do the very professional expert transition from the Rocky Mountain High of John Denver to the Rocky Mountain News, which is the newspaper in Colorado. Because if you think that, like, maybe John Denver is going to be that voice of rationality that's just going to, like, tamp things down. No, because we get just into the next year. We get into 1986 and in early 1987, and the Denver Police Department creates an occult crimes unit.
I actually remember this.
Now, they boast about the success of this by rounding up a satanic gang of 12 to 15 people. Now, the crimes were minor burglaries, graffiti, like basically spray painting 666 on things. Now, when the Rocky Mountain News goes to, like, see if they can, like, talk to any of the suspects or do any investigation, no names turn up. So there's a solid chance that the Denver Police Department just even made up this to, like, account for the fact that they now have a task force.
Well, they're getting funded.
Yeah.
But how awesome were the police cars? Like, did they have, like, horns?
Oh,
God.
Did they copy the Witchmobiles?
Right. Or was it a big halo? Like the light halo?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's right. It probably was. Probably was.
Did they have special badges? Like I want this to be a cartoon so bad. Like,
oh my God, that's a great idea. Because if you had holy water cannons, like, I mean, just pivoting out.
Non-lethal combat, right?
Non-lethal combat.
Yeah.
Right.
So Colorado weirdly becomes like a focal point of like the Satanic Panic, which now when I approach this topic, I'm thinking now we're in 86, 87, 88. We're in the waning days of it. I was sorely mistaken. So like they also police in Greeley, Colorado, take into custody. It's 30 juveniles and 6 18-year-olds for the crime of daring each other to approach a shed in a field that's the witch's house. So basically a bunch of 18-year-olds would be like, you can't hang out with us kids unless you go to the witch's house. They rounded them all up. It's like
did that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the most
initiation, right? Like,
that's a haunted house. We did it multiple times. Absolutely. Yeah. So I might have been arrested, led away in the cuffs.
Yeah, it is one of the most, just
it's unbelievable.
It's just kids' urban legend stuff.
Right. It's a trespassing crime at best.
What's amazing.
That's officially what they tagged them with.
Right.
Note that they rounded up 36 individuals involved in satanic activity, aka trespassing.
Right.
Hey guys, when did the movie Cobra come out? Was that 1983 with Stallone?
Oh, well, so
what made you think of that?
That's Stallone versus Satan.
Because it was Stallone against a satanic cult.
Yeah.
1983.
That's a good idea. I didn't
Chris
holy cow.
Wait a minute. You're talking about
86. The same time the occult task force was created.
Right, 86. Yeah, wasn't that when Cobra came out? It was.
Yep.
It was right.
You're the disease. I'm the cure. That movie, right?
Yeah.
I'm a hero of the new world.
You're a disease, and I'm the cure.
Die! Drop it!
Oh my God. Yeah. So think about this. We've got McMartin still in pre-trial. So
I
not
think I
in
got
trial.
dug with that. That was a hell of a pull. Come on, guys.
That is
now I got to pull the clip.
so Rambo and Rocky is fighting Satanists, right? Like, think about what this is doing in the culture.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cobra to me, Cobra's one of my favorite movies. I still watch it all the time. And Cobra, got to me. It makes me laugh a couple times when they're hanging together the freaking implements of evil and destruction with their axes and their swords, because that was such a satanic thing, with the
We have a
blood
great photo that you're going to love.
There was theater smoke in the produce section of a grocery store. That I definitely remember that.
Yeah, man, because it was satanic. And so to me, Cobra sort of encapsulates the entire satanic panic, even today. So anyway,
you are totally right, and like your description there of the the paraphernalia, the satanic paraphernalia. Wait until you see the evidence photo from the Denver police that we have for this episode.
It's amazing.
They might as well have raided the Cobra set. Now that I'm thinking about it,
listen, I never think we can do a better show. I never think after last week when we did the Seekers, the Marjorie Taylor Greene show was actually an epic show that we did. We have done some amazing shows.
Yeah,
but the fact that we have linked 1964 to Rocky Mountain High to Cobra, I don't know, in the satanic panic evolution, might be one of the best things we've ever done. And I will tell you this show, the fact that you started with Rocky Mountain High and went in with John Denver as the Christian hero against the fabulous and the satanic panic shit artists and shit slingers, is absolutely brilliant and true. Yeah. And that's what's so incredible about this. This is facts-based. This is this is actually happened in congressional hearings. This is the real stuff, the real poop that we're pushing right now is the fact that that all of this is cyclical, but we're in a time period where this type of nonsense can be pushed in a way digitally that we've never seen before. That is the difference. Right. Sadly, the fertilization of this stuff is now sprouting in a way I think it was even worse than Cobra. It's 100%. We are beyond a small portion of people, or even just 10 million believing this. You're talking about roughly probably 35 to 40% of the country.
Right.
Well, Matt's got one more story for you.
Yeah, I've got one more story.
Holy crap.